We're so excited, Roger, for you to be here with us today, all the way from South Africa. Roger is currently the co-founder of PolicyDock.com, which automates insurance. PolicyDock provides a turnkey platform as a service that digitizes new or existing products in days, standardizes data workflows, and offers modular integration with APIs for product and policy admin to ensure digital flexibility and integration with latest technologies available. Prior to founding PolicyDock, Roger was a fintech entrepreneur and investor in the Chinese internet finance space based in Beijing, where he had firsthand experience in an industry that grew from 30 million RMB per year to 250 billion RMB per year from 2008 to 2018. In 2011, he founded Pandai, a peer-to-peer lending platform with the sole purpose of making finance simple, safe, and transparent. Since founding, Pandai has been quoted in numerous media outlets and publications, both global and domestic. Roger has also been a sought-after paid consultant on the topics of fintech, microfinance, and Chinese wealth management and financial regulations. He exited the business in 2018. Roger grew up in South Africa and moved to the US, where he attained his BS in electrical engineering from UCSD and his MS in MS&E from Stanford University. He is a member of the Young Presidents Organization. And just as an aside, Roger and I overlapped at Stanford, and we were able to briefly reconnect first in Dubai and then in Hong Kong. So welcome, Roger.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, so we were connected in Dubai on the way to start the China adventure, like a long time ago. Yeah, so around 2009 or so. So I remember that time quite fondly.
All right, so thank you again for being with us today. Let's start with some questions that we prepared. Sure. Entrepreneurship can be a lonely journey. Did you have mentors, peers, community to support you and help you work through challenges?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it wasn't so much. I think when I first started Pandai, it was kind of pretty much a gung-ho move. I felt I could really take the world on its own. And then I was fortunate enough to bring on a chairman and actually first angel investor in the business. And it was a pretty interesting experience because first 3 to 6 months, I didn't really listen to him. And then I made a lot of mistakes. And every time I made mistakes and he gave me the advice before things happened, that's when I really started to respect the gray, the gray hair per se. So after that, I became, very more open to suggestions and listening intently to whatever nuggets of wisdom folks had to share. And then there was also, when I was in Beijing in those early days, we had quite a nice entrepreneurial community where people would get together, and it was kind of the Wild West a little bit, because it was just after the financial crisis, and actually a lot of people, so like ex-investment bankers and things, had moved to Beijing to kind of seek the China opportunity, me included. And it was pretty wild. People were doing different things, and there's always something to share or learn between peers and such and so forth. And the Stanford alumni community was also very strong back then too. It's still strong too, but so yeah, so it was pretty wild experience, but really fun at the same time.
Did you find that helpful, the Stanford network, while you were in Beijing and starting Pandai? Was that?
Yeah, no, it was initially very, very helpful. I mean, it was especially with the alumni events, you're going to meet highly motivated people. Everyone's doing something different. Everyone's got a different experience to share. So yeah, no, it was just great to get a diversity of different folks, and and also people who knew people who would be able to introduce to folks who may be helpful. So yeah, it was really super helpful.
Okay, and how did you go about finding co-founders and team members for your for Pandai, and how would you would you go about it differently for subsequent startups that you may start?
So yeah, Pandai was, I had two partners initially, and then frankly speaking, after a couple months, one wanted to go back to the US, and then the other kind of gave up, and I kind of went on alone as a sole founder through Pandai, and there was only really one incubator in China called China Entrepreneurs, but when it was incubator, it was more like, hey, we're just going to give you cheap office rent. So I initially worked with contractors to first build the first version of the platform, and then while I was building the platform, I started recruiting from, just basically me and how'd you say, like 20 square meter office or room. And it was interesting because you'd advertise for a position, and this is around 2011, 2012. Entrepreneurship wasn't so popular back then in China, believe it or not. Back then, any new university grad would want to go work for a state-owned enterprise or a large multinational corporation with a stable job, etc. So, you basically begged people to come and work for you, and you had to even kind of like maybe give a little bit more money than overpay in the market to kind of what they actually deserve. So that initial phase, and it was it's kind of like, you can imagine like 6-7 of us holed up in a little office, and and as well, it's also not a great thing when some people come 1 month and they leave, then you're hiring a new person. So initially in China, HR was quite a bit of a challenge, and also another thing is, Chinese, at least the market back then, they don't believe in stock options. So even if you're promising a big dream that you could be a shareholder in the next early shareholder in the next potential Alibaba or something like that, then it was they just ignore that. Basically, it was they smile and nod, and they don't really value those share options.
Gotcha. You said you work with contractors and you paid team members to join you. Were you backed at that point? I assume you already had raised the round.
I had enough. No, I bootstrapped. So yeah, I bootstrapped myself, and then within 2 to 3 months of market launch, then I managed to raise from a small angel investor, who then became the chairman of the company, and that's how it started from there.
Okay, very good. What are some things you underestimated in terms of complexity and difficulty when you embarked on your first entrepreneurial journey? And how about the converse? Any things that you overestimated?
You're talking about Pandai, or you're talking about PolicyDock?
Yeah, sure. Like, are there certain things that before, like a task, or be it maybe it's marketing, maybe it's fundraising, putting together a team, product market fit, or something, like is there anything that you thought would be a lot easier than it turned out to be? Lots of times when you without enough knowledge about a certain task, you tend to underestimate the complexity involved in carrying out that task.
Yeah, so I mean, I think for me, well, I was pleasantly surprised, which I found quite easy, and I think played to a bit of my strengths, was doing the PR and getting the name of the company out there, especially for Pandai, and actually just getting into the right circles and in the right room, and pitching and doing all these different types of entrepreneurial events, in terms of whether it's pitching or fundraising or things like that, or going to universities to give talks, and that thing. So that was pretty interesting, that it was all rather accessible, and I think that was also because just in the industry, and the idea that we were doing was peer-to-peer lending, which was still very new back in 2011, 2012, and and also in terms of my previous company, I had worked at a company that is now today with over 50,000 employees, and I joined them when it was a 30-person business. So, you know, there was a lot. Because of that previous experience, and understanding a market that was kind of very unknown to most people, anywhere, even within China, that gave me a bit of a leg up, and so that pleasantly was quite easy. I'd say the real challenges, especially in China, in my personal view, was HR. So that was something, you know, learned really, you know, the hard way, basically. And that was kind of an uphill battle to get control of HR, and, you know, in terms of making good hiring and firing decisions, and creating great incentives for your staff, basically, and keeping them engaged. So that was very challenging.
Very good. Okay, and then before you embarked on your journey, you likely had some ideas of what was important for success and how to prioritize them. How did those things and priorities change throughout your journey?
For Pandai, so yeah, I think, you know, one thing was for, you know, especially nuance to China market, is that, yeah, you pick a large market and you go after it, and, you know, you believe in ideas, right? And so I think that's one thing. Because even at you know, Stanford, it's like, you know, if you've, you know, and especially in America, if you've got a great idea, you go for it, and you kind of build everything around the idea. In China, I found it to be a bit different, in a way that, you know, you can have a great idea, and ideas are kind of like, you know, a dime a dozen, and, you know, you can go after it. But what's more important in China is, like, actually the people that are at your disposal, that can, because it's so hard to attract people, you know, and basically execute in China, because it's just such a cutthroat and such a highly competitive environment. So, you know, you essentially design the business around the people that you are able to attract and get in China, and then you have to pick up your niches along those lines, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you. What are some things you did that you would do differently in your subsequent startups that you learned the hard way on your first one?
Yeah, I think so. In my first one is just basically, I'd say, I was too, you know, I wanted to kind of be always in control and always the majority stakeholder, and give away as little, you know, as possible, you know, type of thing. And I think you know, that was because, you know, at the end of the day, when you're the largest shareholder in the business or anything, you know, you own, not only do you own the upside, but you also own most of the headache, right? So I think in my new company, I am totally shameless now about, you know, getting help from anyone, whoever who's willing to help in the company and likes what we're doing. So that was something I think changed me a lot dramatically. Before I was a very proud guy, maybe, you know, I thought, hey, Stanford grad, I'm super intelligent, etc., etc. And, you know, you kind of just, you know, you once you hit a few brick walls, you eat some humble pie, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not the way to do it. And I think in my new startup, I'm totally almost shameless about, hey, if someone wants to chat, if someone wants to help, and if someone wants to get involved somehow, I'm super open to getting people involved. And I think, you know, in this year, that's something we've done quite well. We've built a great advisory board. We're part of all these different, getting more involved in different startup ecosystems. And, you know, I have a co-founder, and he's been great so far. So, you know, it's also nice to have a sounding board, and, you know, basically share, you know, I think there's a saying, especially in China, which is, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So.
Oh, very good. On a more personal tone, life-work balance, mental health, personal relationships, and personal finances are often strained when starting a company. How did you navigate through those aspects of your personal life?
In China, there was literally zero work-life balance. It's like if you've heard about the 996, which is 9 hours to 9 hours, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And I was living that 7 days a week as a founder. I've slept in like 6 Chinese airports. I've basically just around the block, just running around and flying to different cities and things like that. And, always fighting fires. And, I think also in the new startup, it's what I also learned was, from that experience is like how much of what you do really matters. And honestly, if I was really honest with myself, even though you're running around this like almost like 30, almost about 30 to 50% if you really think about it, right? I mean, a lot of the problems you deal with is also probably from also bad decisions that you've made in the past that you now have to go ahead and fix. So in the new company, PolicyDock, yeah, I think it's, previously from working hard and, and is mindlessly working hard and kind of, I'd say, going down a rabbit hole. I think in PolicyDock, I try to think about just working smart as possible and, hours at work and not how many hours have you done. I think with the new company PolicyDock, it's also I'm in a different financial position. As I was before with Pandai, and with Pandai was was a lot of grind. I'd say the first 3 years, right, was just lots lots of blood, sweat, and tears.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for that. We also have some questions that were submitted by attendees at registration.
Sure.
And I think some of them are actually on the call right now. Michael Chow asks, what is the highest high versus lowest low in your entrepreneurial journey?
So yeah, wow, man, it's like, so Pandai, Pandai lowest low was, look, I was on the verge of bankruptcy twice. I was literally, basically just thinking to myself, yeah, I've got like 1 month to go. What happens next, right? So, you kind of just, you go into a lull for like a day or two, and then, and then you kind of like think philosophically about your life and type of thing, and then you got to go and hustle and haul ass basically. I think also from Pandai, it's like I paid zero in PR, and I got Eunice Yoon of CNBC to come with me to our organic pig farm project in Yunnan, which is literally in the middle of nowhere, and come and do an exclusive scoop with our company, and that became into a worldwide exclusive, worldwide story around the world, and got a lot of attention, a lot of press, and things with that. So it's not like every day you're going to think like, hey, I'm going to be on global news television, and you have friends from all over the world saying, shit, I just saw you on CNBC. That's some wild wild work you're doing. So you have your highs and lows.
Oh, very good. Catherine Kavanaugh asks, please tell us how you persevered through your first quote unquote valley of death.
Yeah, so I think it's I'd say like you got to really like just believe in yourself, and believe in what you're doing, and this sounds kind of wild, and have faith. But then I think once you get past that and you kind of like feel, hey, this is what I'm destined to do, and then it's just breaking up the problem into smaller parts, and just trying to it might be a huge problem made out of many smaller problems, but then you got to like, once you break it up into smaller problems, they become a lot more easier, or more less of a hurdle to do, and then you just go after one by one, and then once you once you start on that kind of sort of winning trajectory again, then that builds up the confidence, and you can go again, basically.
Excellent.
Everyone's welcome to join in.
May I go?
Yes, go ahead, Katie.
Hi, I'm Roger. Katie Kavanaugh here. Thanks for answering my question about the Valley of Death. It's at least I've got a Christmas tree here in the Valley of Death. I'd like to know about levels of cash on hand that one should have while in the Valley of Death, and if there is a no-go period. I mean, 0, of course, is a no-go, but if for instance, you're actually starting to make a little bit of money, but it's very little, and you have just a few users, what are some levels, milestones that you really should be marking or getting to that show progress?
Yeah, I say, personally, I think it depends on the type of company that you're running. If it's if it's a lifestyle business for yourself, then think about your lifestyle and think about savings. But then if it's also if you are going that venture capital route, and that's something I felt also that Stanford does a great job of, is like, hey, go the venture capital route. This is the only route VC, but no, there's many other ways to run a business, right? There's plenty of great lifestyle businesses. There's plenty of different types of agreements that folks have done. So I think if you are going that VC route, then it's being in touch and in tune with the investors and knowing the market in terms of like, hey, I might not be fundable today, but if I hit X and X milestones, would that make me fundable, basically? Or if it's, if you are running a business where you've got few users, it's kind of, you want to turn it into, I don't know, like a lifestyle business to be self-sustaining, then it's managing your costs effectively and building up and just building up brick by brick. So that's, being as lean as possible. So I think basically there's that old adage saying like begin with the end in mind. It's essentially really understanding like what is the goal of the business, right? Is it to, I think, so for example, in Pandai, we were actually a cash flow positive peer-to-peer lending company, but then all my competitors who are growing like 5 to 10x and etc. were basically, dependent on their backers, basically. And because they were dependent on their backers, they didn't build strong loan fundamentals into their business. It was just about, essentially giving away as much, they take money from VCs and then they try go as large as possible to get to the next round. And if you like read anything about the industry in China and peer-to-peer lending, a lot of these guys are being eradicated today, right? So it also it's really dependent on I think at least really dependent on the type of business you're running. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I think it also sounds like self-sustainability is what you would promote. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's, at the end of, in the early days, it's self-sustainability, I'd say. Depending on how confident you are in terms of, if you are going the VC, angel backer out, angel VC, etc. It depends on your confidence in your fundraising, and it's also being in touch with what folks want to see, I think.
Ask a question.
Hi, may I go?
Maybe David first and then Jude.
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Thanks to you for doing this, by the way. I really appreciate it. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about sort of your creative process when you analyze potential business ideas. Kind of, you talked about big markets earlier. Just maybe if you could think a little bit more philosophically about how you think about new venture ideas and how you sort through the ideas that pop up, just that whole process.
Yeah, so for example, when we came to Pandai, I thought like, look, credit penetration in China at that time was about 20%, right? So it's like, even if you do something half right, there's going to be a need, there's going to be a market. etc., etc. These days, when before I started PolicyDock, I thought I had I took a year off and I did a lot of soul searching, and I thought, what is the type of business that I want to run? What did I enjoy about my previous experience? What did I not enjoy about the previous experience? And in the previous experience, I originally started a fintech business. It was a fintech business, but actually running the company was very much like a traditional business where I had a sales team, I had credit, I had et cetera, collections, underwriting, things like that. And it was kind of like, it doesn't feel so tech if you had a tech team and et cetera, but it doesn't feel so tech. And it felt very brick and mortar actually. So when we were opening up, like most of our sales had to be done online offline actually to provide. So our loan origination was offline, but our online fundraising was all online basically. So it was very much, like an O2O type of business. And also I experienced a lot with dealing with the different types of regulators in China. So the local governments, the PBOC and the CBRC, and you really understand how they think. And then in PolicyDock, I thought, like, what are the characteristics of not even looking at the idea or what we're doing, what are the characteristics of the business that I want to run for the next 5 to 10 years? And I looked at companies that I really envy, and actually, like, one of the companies that I really envy is like, man, wouldn't it be great to be the CEO of Zoom? Because the CEO of Zoom, he doesn't have to do marketing, like everyone has to get on Zoom. He's not kind of, it's all technology, it's highly scalable, it's in the cloud, it's a global target market. So I thought, hey, I want to be in the business of selling bits and bytes, basically. As Pandai grew to about 200 employees at the peak before we exited the business. And so with PolicyDock, it's like, me personally, I don't like managing people. I don't like managing sales teams. I want to kind of design the business where it can kind of, it can be sold anywhere. It doesn't have to be kind of in person and verification. I don't want to be in the business of scaling risk and dealing with regulators, just going through their headache and dealing with them and having them change their minds every 6 months to 1 year. So having that type of and also picking, like, hey, insurance and insurtech. One of the insights I thought was for when I looked at fintech, in fintech in China, it grew so fast, so much innovation. And then the way I see insurtech now, it's like, it feels like it was fintech 6, 7, 8 years ago. So, having some sort of, track record of observing a pattern that's happening. And, I think in 6 to 7 or 10 years, PolicyDock, we, might not get the traction in the first year or two. Not saying we're not, but I'm just saying if we don't get the traction that we want in a year or two, the market, this is the mega trend, I think, for the market to go in the next 5 to 10 years. So, you already see evidence of this with companies like Lemonade and Hippo and things like that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. My question is, how do you see, when you first went to China, what did you expect to be in China? How many years did you expect to be in China before you exit? And the follow-up on that would be, why are you in South Africa now and not staying in China in your second venture?
Yeah. So yeah, I think so. It's kind of funny because it's a bit of a wild story, but when I graduated at Stanford, I joked with my friends that, look, I'm going to China to start a bank, and second of all is I'm going to learn capitalism from the communists, because I had done an internship at a VC firm in China, and I was like, well, holy Moses, there's a lot going on here, basically. And I was like, I was going to China with a long-term view. I thought, look, markets are going to open up. different sectors were starting to open up. You saw that back in 2008, 2009, 2010, right? And I thought, look, all these are trends, these are kind of just things that are happening basically. And so I went there for a long-term plan. Most people who went to China stayed there 2 to 3 years and then they left. So I ended up staying there 10 years. And I left frankly because it's one thing you do learn is I've grown up in South Africa, and living in China, it's very much a local person's game. I had some competitive edge, having being studied from Stanford and kind of having slightly of a more stronger network. But when you go to China these days, it's kind of it's a total different game. It's as a foreigner going to China, this zero competitive edge. I wouldn't say zero, but very little you can find in certain industries in terms of competitive edge. Very strong. In China you need relationships, and they say guanxi. So it's a total different game, and I'd say the market dynamics have also changed in that front, where it's also even a little bit less welcoming to foreigners than it was before. So I think in any new venture that you start, it's kind of like, what is your unfair advantage? And if I were to stay in China to do anything, I had to be honest with myself, and I've got zero unfair advantage in China. And that's after building a network there for 10 years. so yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. In other words, the market, the environment is not so conducive to foreign entrepreneurs going to China now than 10 years ago.
And it depends on which sector,
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Roger. So I'm curious, tell us a little more about PolicyDock, and a seasoned entrepreneur like you, why go plug and play?
Yeah, well, as I said, get all the help that you can get. Plug and play is a good network with our target market and the people that we need to reach. So, we've frankly speaking, if there's kind of free help to get around, then why not? I come from a fintech background, so insurance is getting to know insurance every day more and more, and basically trying to you make my life easier at the end of the day, right? So if people can help me, then why not? And plug and play you don't need to give up any equity for plug and play. So it's a selective process to get in. So it's another validation to the business. Yeah, why not?
Can I have another question?
Go ahead, Jude.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned in China, a lot of success depends on relationship, more so than in the US or anywhere else. So how did you deal with the relationship building, or did you pass it off to someone else, basically outsourced it, or did you have to do it yourself for your successful first venture? Thank you.
I had to do that myself, and yeah, it's a total different culture per se to what it's like when you do guanxi in China, and there's like, how do you say, it involves a lot of time, basically just getting people to trust you. I did a JV with a wealth management business in China, and even before that, there was a lot of, frankly speaking, drinking involved for people to get to know each other, and that type of thing. And then even when you meet with, like, for example, I met, I've gone to, even in the PBOC, or even if you're meeting like the head of a rural commercial bank, but a rural commercial bank in China is actually like 200 billion RMB of assets under management. So it's not a small bank, basically, but it's like when you meet with the head of the bank, you're gonna have lunch, you're gonna drink baijiu, which is Chinese rice wine. You're going to spend a lot of time just doing that, getting them to understand who you are. So that is part of the culture. I spent a week on the Tibetan mountain plains with one of the village chiefs, just spending 4 days at high altitude, living in a tent with a whole group of people, and doing all those bonding sessions. So that's just part of the game. And when in Rome, do as the Romans. and that's something I don't want to do again.
But that's something that's valuable that you've built and you've invested. And then are you giving this all up by leaving China?
Well, yeah, frankly speaking, I think it's, I think any types of networks or etc. There's different types of bonding, and maybe, I think the skill of adapting and bonding is probably more important than, who you're bonding with. So.
Thank you. The skill of bonding is more important. That's what's valuable instead of the what's the result of the bonding, right?
No, I mean we do build the relationships and etc. But like I think I went there and just yeah. So we managed to build relationships even as an outsider. So that was a good experience.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I've got a question, if I may. So just by way of quick introduction, I was MS&E 2007, moved to the Midwest. I was there from 2008 to 2010. So I saw Detroit and Chicago during the financial crisis, live in New York now, working on a startup. So thanks for answering my first question about the startup roller coaster, the high highs and the low lows. Something that you hear a little bit about, like serial entrepreneurs, is the first time founders, focus on product. Second time founders focus on distribution. And I think you alluded to some of the lessons that you sort of took away from the first experience, thinking about like bits and bytes in distribution and making it simpler. Can you talk a little bit more around like, what influenced and how you think about go-to-market, given those lessons of online to offline and all the trouble with the regulators? We're in a similar space where we build a passenger infotainment platform in ride shares. And so we've definitely had to face entities like the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission, et cetera. And then, my background's all around digital software. So that part was, easy to build in a sense. The fun part and a lot of the eye-opening part was, how do you work with city council, local government, when things go to court, all these things of unknown unknowns, especially in an environment, I would say pre-WeWork, where it was growth at all cost. And you have competitors raising, $10, $20 million, Series A's, let's say, and trying to do the responsible thing and, prove out product market fit. But it's tough when, people are just burning money left and right and getting distribution in ways that don't make sense from a unit economic standpoint.
Yeah, so I think, your question mainly around distribution, right? Or
yeah, like, knowing what given these sort of frustrations, et cetera, and the lessons from the first time, how do you think about distribution differently in that sort of serial entrepreneur hat, things that you wish you would have learned or imparted from that experience to lessen the pain, let's say?
No, that's a great question, because I mean, I'm going to be very honest. I think I've made the same mistake twice. So in PolicyDock, as even before we started, we interviewed people. We said, hey, this is what is this what you want? If we made this like so much simpler, and like in the Stanford D School class, they do such a great job of teaching this, and like, hey, even if it means putting up like a piece of paper that how the screen looks like, just to get that initial customer feedback and etc. And even before starting PolicyDock, I interviewed competitors. I kind of looked at the market landscape, etc. And then once we're going to market now in PolicyDock, we find out, okay, there's more competitors just in this short amount of time. We still believe we have superior in terms of technology and things like that. But then what they didn't say reading between the fine print was that, like, hey, sales cycles in insurance are really long, right? So yeah, I think there was a period of, again, let's talk about the lows and lows, this period of 2 to 3 months of like, we've got so many good conversations going. Why is nobody like, people are signing up, but it's, for example, in insurance, it takes these guys 2 to 3 weeks just to sign an NDA, right? So there you are like, oh my gosh, I feel like such a loser. And then one thing that really did help me, we brought on an advisor who's, insurance executive, also joined the insurtech that sold into insurers. So he has the exact relevant experience that we wanted. And, he's telling us like, dude, you guys are moving at a lightning speed. I'm like, oh, really? So it was that kind of reassurance that gives you that type of thing, because we expected these deals to be done in like a month or two. Now, and insurance sales cycles is like between 6 months to 12 months. And in the 2 to 3 months, we've had a product, etc. We've started conducting pilots. We have some strong deal flow and things like that. So I felt like, just coming from a China background, that we were not moving fast enough, but then it appears so that we're actually moving at a lightning speed for the industry. So it's just something that I think, even now we're also trying to do more and more customer development calls. So talking to anyone and just trying to get the positioning of the product and trying to get as much detailed information as well as getting. And I don't come from the B2B SaaS experience. I think you're doing a B2C play. So it's a total different types of metrics. And then just understanding like, what are the metrics you should do? What is the sales cadence? How many follow-ups, how many touch points is it going to do to kind of close a deal? And it always helps to have, this is something either you as a CEO, you have to learn quickly, or you can find someone that find the relevant experience that's going to plug your gaps. And personally, this is not something I greatly do. So I'm also like looking for, folks to help us in terms of building these expertise. Did that answer your question? Or?
Oh yeah, that's super helpful. I think the, from our perspective, we're going into this B2B SaaS world with the long
okay, so you're also B2B.
Well, yeah. So our context is before we were, deploying and sort of that ramp up of the B2C marketplace. But, our pivot, if you will, during COVID is shifting towards, providing picks and shovels to folks as a platform. But in doing so, we reach consumers in a B2B2C channel. And so that middle part of, influencing go-to-market distribution is a very much different motion than that sort of motion before.
It's two different worlds, right? So B2C and yeah.
It's like learning to run versus swim in a way.
Well said. Well said.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Charlie. I'm a JD based in Chicago. You were talking about what you learned about, delegating and learning to trust team members. So could you talk more about your strategy and what kind of mindset you have when you're hiring partners and employees, and what kind of traits or characteristics you're looking for, whether they're hard factors or soft factors?
Yeah. So I think in China it's going to be a different experience to outside, just because of just different market dynamics, developing world. Well, so not really developing, but like it's just a different type of competitive landscape. But when it comes to hiring, so for example, my partner, we know each other for over 10 years. We're working with an IT solutions firm in South Africa very closely. So everything did come through trusted networks in the beginning. We took some flies with some board of advisors, and we structured the advisory agreements so that there is kind of happy parting ways, breakups, or if it does work out. So it's also kind of a feeler for everyone to get to know each other too. And then in terms of hiring employees, I'd say in China it was kind of hire fast, fire fast. I don't think it's going to be the same outside Just so, for example, if you want to get a 10-person sales team in China, you're gonna hire 30 people or 50 people. Sometimes you're gonna call 80 of them, and type of thing. So it's also like, and also there's also propensity more for fraud in China. So you know, a lot of people, you read a resume and you have no idea, so you have to design kind of your interviews and kind of them actually doing the tasks beforehand. PolicyDock, we're still a very young company. We have one free intern that we just actually onboarded literally a week ago, and he contacted us. So it was more of him showing initiative. We interviewed him. He seemed like a good guy. Seemed like similar value sets. So, and also kind of, you know, having those type of in-depth interviews and, you know, seeing if your values aligned. And I think also with our board advisors is also, you know, you have a good feeling when we do, you know, interact with them and chat with them, and also make sure they know what they're getting themselves into. I think that's something I'm very different now. It's just saying like, look, we are like X amount of persons. This could work and this could fail. And you know, if for it to work, X, Y, and Z has to happen, and you have to help X, Y, and Z happen. Otherwise, you know, no one's going to go home to drink whiskey.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, it's coming up on time now, and we don't want to tire Roger out because it's approaching 10 p.m. there. Thank you so much, Roger, for sharing your experiences and being so candid with everyone. We really appreciate it. A final question for you. What's your ask from the audience?
Yeah, you know, look, we're looking to meet as many insurers as possible. If anyone has any insurance quality sales leads, welcome to introduce. But you know, anything I can help with or anything, please feel free to reach out. Totally hope I can pay it forward, basically.
Yeah,